How you doing? Um, Want to check on the sound and the video? Everything is okay or not? Hi, Adam. How you doing? I don't know. Anyone think they'd like to pick up a Rolex Rare Birds? Huh. Hi, Mark. Hi, neighbor. Hey, we got snow finally. Winter is finally here. It's only almost the end of February, and we're having some snow that it's cold. Hi, Adam. Brian, how you doing? Anyway, I wanted to get started today talking about something that came up just the other day. Let me give you a brief history of Daniel Roth, and you probably know this already, but I'm just going to sort of give you a quick overview of his work. I think basically we can start. I think it was in late 70s, the 80s. Um, and uh, the thing about him, he was a great deal of talent. I'm not sure what there was sort of something that led up to a point where the Chaumet brothers, who had bought Breguet and wanted to bring it back, hired him. And he was a very impressive guy to them and turned out to be I mean, they hired him. It turned out to be true. He was really excellent watchmaker. And that went along until the Chaumet brothers went broke. And then Roth started his own company called Daniel Roth. Now, this is a watch from that company, which is from sometime in the 90s to I think the early 2000s. Uh, this I forgot the name of it. Sort of this type of case was very characteristic of his work. And more recently, I found out they've become very popular. I have a couple of them. I have this one, then I have the Metropolitan. I wanted to get he has one called the Papillon, which I really like. And I ran into there was sort of this weird deal on getting. Anyway, back to Daniel Roth. So he, at some point, um, Bulgari bought the rights and name and everything else of the Daniel Roth watches. Okay, well, Daniel Roth worked with them, I think, for only about a year, and it didn't go well. Bulgari got some great watches. He wasn't very happy, and he left. He started another company that he used his first name, his son's name, and his wife's name. It's forgot how the three of them went together, but that's what he's doing now, and he's making like one or two watches a year that are these really fabulous tourbillons that he makes, and they're not too many people can afford them. They're in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But anyway, going back to earlier works, um, after the unhappy parting with Bulgari, there are some watches. There is a Papillon that he did with Bulgari, which I think is pretty much the one that he had done on his own. Well, anyway, he couldn't do anything more with his own name, the eponymous Daniel Roth watches. So, um, so now, and this is really interesting to me. It is anyway. LVMH, which is Louis Vuitton, it is a much bigger thing than I think most people realize they own a lot of watch brands, including Bulgari. And Bulgari now has their own movements and so on and so forth. But there's a part of Louis Vuitton that has it's called Le something Temps to something or other. It's a watchmaking, and the two guys who are the principals in it are very very talented. So anyway, that's so what they somebody at Louis Vuitton or somehow said, well, listen, we've noticed that a lot of people are interested in these Daniel Roth watches, and it's, I mean, just trying to find the ones I want now have become more and more difficult. And I think one of the things that Daniel Roth represents is sort of the quality of this independent watchmaker, the same kind of stature, you might say, that people like F.P. Jorn, um, Smith, what's his face? Smith, Roger Smith, um, Laurent Fourier, all of those guys, except he went to a point out of touch. I mean, he went to a price point out of touch. And so this, I think Louis Vuitton said, well, maybe what we ought to do is bring it back. Now, like I said, Bulgari owns the name, but Louis Vuitton owns Bulgari. So they can do, so that they own it basically. And they're going to bring it out again. I don't know which watches are going to bring out, all of them, some of them. This particular one, this is a chronograph uh, uh, that has a version of the El Primero in it. I think it's called the 400. But then the name of the watch or the name of the movement in the watch is the DR for something or other. Okay. Now, the the only other thing I know off the top of my head where they did that was with Rolex. I think it was in 2004, or I think that's when it was. They said, "Well, we're going to revive the Prince, the Cellini Prince," and they came out with these watches that I thought were great watches, but apparently the Rolex buyers didn't, and so they folded it. The same thing happened with the Gondola, which is another watch I like. If I like it, you can be sure they're going to cancel its production. Okay, so that's just sort of the introduction of what I wanted to do. How you doing, Tim? Kinosaki, Truman Burbank, how are you? Tom uh, Jamo. Oh, good. Welcome. Paul. Hi, Paul. Good grief. Good to see you. Washington football fan next year. Jonathan, hi. Okay. All right. So what I, what I want, I thought, this is sort of an interesting thing is that what is going on? What do you think the thinking is going on when you have these companies like Louis Vuitton? Um, Hang on a second. I'm looking up the 1 second. There it is. La Fabrique du Temps. This is the one that's owned. That's the name of the movement thing that they have. Let me put it down here. They're the ones that are going to make these new Daniel Roth watches, which is going to be sort of interesting. If they're going to take the old movements, that's also going to be interesting because the old movements, a lot of the old movements, like this one, have a El Primero movement, the first one. Now, I don't know about the. I know that El Primero came out more than 17 years ago, sort of a time when the patent runs out. But the question I suppose I have is that what are they going to do which ones are they going to choose? How are they going to market it? Are they just going to take the higher end ones, like the Papillon? Are they going to use precious metals again, or try to put them out in steel? I don't know. This is sort of a something, and so that's what I want to ask you guys. So, um, yeah, that's it. Um, Hi, Alberto. How you doing? Good morning, planet Earth. Morning. Are you from New Zealand? Guys from New Zealand this morning. It's 8 o'clock. Um, okay, so what are your thoughts on that? And can you think of any other thing where a similar thing happened where they sort of reached back and they pulled out something? Now, in some respect, that's exactly what happened with Breguet. And when Daniel Roth helped the Chomet brothers bring it back to life because it was on, you know, uh, it was barely making it when they took it over, and now it's sort of an interesting type of health with a battery run heart. I'll put it that way. Breitling, 806, 1959. That's a great example. That's a great example. Yes, I've seen some of the Speedmasters too, going back to certain original ones. I think even though with Breguet, one of the two bad parts about it, at least this is my view, and I know it's not everyone's, is that they had to put the silicone hairspring. Why not put in plastic bridges and that'll work, and plates and so forth. Use nylon wheels. I don't know. Yeah, you're right about that. I was trying. Is there in a whole brand though? A whole trying to think who is well. Jesus. One of the things that I wish they would do something with it is Roger Dubuis, because they have all of these, to me, hideously ugly watches. The whole thing is owned by the Richemont Group, Daniel Roth, and they really do have Daniel Roth movements in them, but they gave him some other stupid names. So I think they simply have to sort of go back and pick up some of the earlier models. I know, like, one thing at Brigadier, the model I really like is called the Tradition. They look like something that Abraham Louis Brigade made. But I mean, taking a whole and sort of trying to think, I guess it's sort of a funny thing because Louis Vuitton happens to own Bulgari. Bulgari happened to acquire uh, Daniel Roth, and despite the fact that it only lasted a year, and it was, but even so, some really great watches came out of that. But now, what are they going to do with it? And are they going to, you can still find some not crazy prices on these on the Daniel Roth, but is that going to are they going to come out with a whole new wave of them? Have something, let's say, in the $5,000 area, or are they going to be jumping up to $10,000 and $20,000? I don't know. What do you think? I have really interested. Hi, Gustav. Okay. Um, Alberto, how you doing? Okay, let's hear some opinions from you guys. Something interesting. Can you think of any more watches and what is the effect going to be? Alberto, I often felt Breguet modern ones. They are nice, but something not click my interest. Yeah. Well, what doesn't click my interest in everything that Swatch is doing is that they start stuffing in the um, silicon hairsprings. Apparently, they developed one. In fact, I think it may have been a Breguet one that they can now adjust. I don't know how much they can adjust. I saw it and it looked like it's got these like a little sort of a little uh, uh God, um, sort of like a line of mosaics, little things here along it, and so they can make it bigger and smaller. But I'm not sure how they're going to get the kind of spring that they need to keep a certain pattern going. With that, okay, let's. What are some other things you guys can think of? Hi, Kanowski. The Longines Big Eye was yes, yes, yes. The Big Eye, that's one I like too. Laco reproduction of the World War II pilot watch, the BUR. Yeah, that's oh boy, yeah. Some of the ones, yeah. The these are brands. They're good examples, but I mean they're brands. And the one I gave too with Rolex and their print. But can you think of a company that has done what Louis Vuitton, LVMH is doing now? And I'm trying to. I think, well, after the reunification of Germany, just about every watch that they made in Glasuda was sort of they had to bring back a lot of the ones sort of pre-war ones are and which was also the sort of the pre-Soviet eras, and they tried to bring in some classics and so forth. Guys like Rolf Lang, who had been working restoring sort of the whole mechanism, the watch movements and mechanisms in the I forgot what his name is. It was in a museum in Dresden that got bombed pretty badly during the war. And that was one of the things he did to get into watchmaking. But rather taking saying, trying to think would be an equivalent of some. Well, if there wasn't still a Roger Dubuis, it would be like somebody taking his stuff from the early 2000s and then bringing them all back. Who else did that? Can you think of somebody else who was sort of a tutor all the freaking time? Okay. Sadly, the same thing happens in many areas of business. For instance, I can mention many brands in the perfume industry where the brand name is the same as the founder who bought it and moved on. Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, this is another thing though. What one thing you can do with watches is that you can see the movement. You know what the movement is. You know what it looks like. And let's say you take a one that was developed fully by Daniel Roth. Let's say I don't know if he did. I know that parts of a lot of the movements, like the one he did on the 24 cities, that one had a bunch. It had a Lamania in it. It had a regulator by ETA. It was a very strange watch, or movement in it, but it's very. I mean, you can identify it. Um, Certain other movements that you see, and a lot of them are became ETA movement, but they were um, before ETA. They were all of these different ones. From Pazoo was one that became the 7001. The ETA itself was a different ETA. Um, Unitas, that was another brand that they picked up on. uh Valju, that's another one. So you have all of those, but you can tell them, you can look at them and say, oh, this is that kind of movement. And I think what they're doing here, they can do that without a problem. And maybe that was seen saying, well, look, what we can do is we can bring these guys back and we don't have to reinvent the movement because they already have a movement. So we'll just get the specs on those and put it together, and Bob's your uncle. They got it done. I mean, I'm not sure what the thinking is going on there. Maybe what they've discovered is that I think more and more people, collectors included, uh, really would like sort of craftsmanship, or at least the sense of some kind of craftsmanship in a watch, apart from mass-produced watches. Like, I don't say this to start a fight, but like Rolex, or like even Patek Philippe now, they're knocking out about 50,000 a year. And now that they got their silicon hairsprings, they don't have to worry about that. I don't know what category they belong to anymore. Um, they water down old formulas. Well, I don't know what they do on the perfume area. Gustav. Cartier. Yeah, Cartier is owned by Richemont, and yeah, Cartier though. See, Cartier kept pulling its own stuff out, like sort of reviving the tank, and then have all different kinds of tanks. Um, but I mean, like you take a brand that was totally independent, and then saying, okay, now it's going. We're going to take something that was really well done, but not crazy popular from, let's say, the 1990s, early 2000s, and then we're going to come back and we're using that name. We're going to use the Daniel Roth name. We're going to use whatever of the many watchmakers. Well, you can take, for example, Marco Lang. Marco Lang has his own company now that he was able to keep his name. Fortunately for him, the one that sort of, I guess, was sold out from under him. Not exactly that, but of the Lang and Heim. Well, he didn't have that name, so now he has Marco Lang watches of his own, and he started all over again. Uh, but he's not taking the old Lang and Heim. He can't. I mean, they're owned. Those movements and everything else are owned by the whoever's holding the reins in that company now. But I think this is worth watching. I think it's worth watching for a lot of reasons. First of all, if it's a flop, we're not going to see a lot more of that. On the other hand, if it's successful, here's another question I guess we could kick around. If Louis Vuitton were successful, they get these let me see. They get these Daniel Roth watches. And they say, okay, we're going to make them the same specs and everything. We even have the blueprints for everything, for the case, for the all the movements and the movement parts. We know what they are. We can gather those up. Um, the La Fabrique du Temps, they'll handle all of the, putting them together or getting them ready to be put together. I don't know how they're going to do it. Um, But if they're successful doing that, what other companies, again, now we're talking about not taking something from your own history and bringing it back up, like um, Brigade did with the tradition. Like I said, I love the tradition, but it's a very different kind of watch now than it was when Louis Brigade first made one. Okay, let's see what you got to see. Ton. Glashudi Original was also started popping in silicon. Yeah, that's because it's owned by Swatch. Sorry. That's a brand I happen to like a lot. Panerai is now Richemont. Yeah, it's been Richemont for a while. I don't know why they let them get away with certain stuff like the 318, but who knows? Um, Laurent Perrier becomes so popular that they will increase production like FP Journe. That's a good question. That's a really good question, Boston Collector. His watches they all seem very formal. his sports watch, even his sports watch, looks like you could, wear that to the coronation of the king. I don't know. That's a great example, though. What would happen if they said, "Okay, we're going to up the production"? I think they just keep the same prices. I don't remember, but I don't think that FP Journe ever said, "Okay, we're going to have much lower prices now." Anything like that. I think that they did come out with the Chronomet Blue. Originally was sort of their entry level, and that was around 18, 19, 20,000. Now they've gone nuts. They'll have to have another incentive than making money. Sadly, that is not how you become the richest person alive. Well, they got something going, I guess. Um, hey, Alberto. Urban Jerk UG is unlikely to come back unless a magic move. UG, who is that? I don't know. You got me on UG. I'm not sure who that is. Hey, football fan, what about Nav Timer being sold by two different companies, Sin and Brightly? I don't know about that. Neither one of those companies is known for creating their own movements. Breitling does have something. I think, forgot what it's called. I'm not even sure who did it. They may have had something to do with it, but I don't know. I used to be a huge Breitling fan, but once I found out that they were not exactly transparent about their movements, I haven't particularly cared for them. They were bought by. It seems that Breitling was owned by some family, and then it was sold to another family. I I don't know. Breitling is sort of on its own wavelength. Same thing with Tag Heuer. That's another one that sort of is out there. None of the big ones own it, but it's a pretty substantial company in and of itself. Um, Universal Geneva, yeah. I don't know what's gonna happen to them. They sort of came back, but not fully. I never was sure. And a lot of the movements they had were ETA movements, but now they can't get ETA movements, so I have no idea what's gonna happen. That I think would be one to take a look at. Nevada Nevada Gretchen? I don't know that one, Boston Collector. Um Here's one that was, I think it totally messed up. Was since somebody asked about it this morning. This is El Leroy. El Leroy from 1900 until 1989 had the most complicated watch in the world. Then 89, Patek Philippe had the most complicated watch. And then in, I think, 2013, Vacheron had the most complicated watch. Um, but the thing was that El Leroy, I have no idea why they sort of went down the drain. Um, and so they were bought by Festina, and I was hoping that Festina would do something with them, and it's they didn't seem to. I mean, um, at the last two watch time shows, they showed up. El Leroy showed up. Now they're called Leroy without the L for Louis, I think. I don't know. That's an interesting company that I would have loved to have seen Festina. Festina is like sort of a mini version of Richemont, some of these other ones. They're a Spanish um, group, and they own Soprod, which is to me a very interesting watchmaking movement making company. Um, they're old dive watches resurrected. Okay, that would be a good example. Thanks. You hear of a company that made watchmaking of Ulysse Nardin Urchin something? I haven't. Doxa. Oh, Doxa. Well, Doxa's been around. They haven't gone anywhere, have they? Or were they ones that were resurrected, but never nobody said anything about them being other than Doxa? Doxa's got sort of a vibe of their own, really. For the immaterial rights rather than production capacity. That could be very true. Think they had a break and resurrected. They could have. So many of these, I think they came back as, some of them. I don't know. I'm trying to think which ones were gone. In a way, I'll tell you what, Brigade was almost gone before the Chomet brothers took it over and brought in Daniel Roth. Um, uh-oh, it's time to go. Okay, yes, Doxa did get resurrected. Thanks, Gustav. All right, guys, lay dormant for decades. No, it's another one. Um, Zenith is a very difficult one to tag too. Look, guys, this is something to watch. I really am interested to see what's going to happen. Two things that are coming up that I think are worth for collectors, especially. One is let's see what Louis Vuitton does with the Daniel Roth, and also what Kari Voutilainen does with Urban Jurgensen. That I think is also going to be interesting. One watch that Urban Jurgensen was about to come out with, maybe they did actually produce a few, is called the Alfred. And the Alfred was like 15,000, something like that. But it was the reason it was 15,000 instead of 30, 40, or 50,000, like their other Urban Jurgensen models, was that one, it was made out of steel. And second, I think it had a sort of a not a Urban Jurgensen movement, but another one that they used with their Big Eight, and I forgot what it was called, but it wasn't the same one. So what's going to be interesting to me is to see what Kari Voutilainen and his group do with it. So we'll see. A new era began when the Jenny family acquired Doxa in 1997. Okay, thank you, Gustav. I like Doxa. An orange Dox I think is so cool. Anyway, everybody, take care. uh, Hope to see you next week and be safe. See you, Brian.